Call to order Safety and Public Works Committee meeting, July 17th, 2023, 6:45 PM in council chambers. We have 7 items. We're going to add an 8th item, which would be something we have in front of us here. Approval of plans and spec for and authorized bidding for the Lum Park Road SPRA project. So that will be item number 8. Item number 1 is the discussion on the assessment reductions due to the detours on Norwood Street. Mr. Dean, if you want to take us through that one, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So at the last meeting, the committee heard from several residents along the Oak Street detour regarding the extra traffic, including trucks that have been going through the area during the project. At the conclusion of the meeting, the committee had 2 requests for staff. First was implementing changeable signage that directed trucks to use an alternative route rather than Oak Street. We were able to have a vendor place one of them just west of the intersection of Highways 18 and 25. Unfortunately, the second one that we were intending to place just east of 13th Street was under repair, and we had not yet seen that get into place. The cost was $1,000 per week per sign. At this point, we are expecting the road to reopen on Thursday afternoon, so staff is informing the vendor the second sign will not be needed. The second item was that staff do some research on if other communities have reductions for future assessments due to using the local road as a detour. We looked at over 30 special assessment policies and did not find any accommodations of that nature in any of the policies. We also did reach out to all of the city engineers in Minnesota and asked if anybody had any provisions for these types of reductions in their special assessment policies. We did receive several responses. However, no communities have provisions of this nature from the responses received. From that research, we listed some key takeaways in the memo. One is that the city participates in assessments to reconstruct streets, which can be looked at as the rest of the public's contribution to utilize those streets when they're needed. Another is the gas tax method formula that MnDOT uses when they use local roads as detours. As described in the example in the memo, this really doesn't amount to much at all. Finally, some communities have a minimum life expectancy or a look-back period for assessment projects that do provide relief to residents who recently had an assessment project, should the city have to return and do more work in a upcoming year type of thing. Understanding the concerns of the residents of the additional traffic, the streets that were discussed would have been candidates for a reconstruction project in the future, with or without a detour. As mentioned in the meeting, maintenance did need to go out there and patch along this route prior to the project taking place to accommodate the detour, as the routes were already showing some signs of distress and deterioration. At this point, staff would like to recommend that the city does not provide for reductions in future assessments, as this can likely cause additional issues and liability for the city in its administration of assessments on projects both past and future. And I'll take any comments from the council.
You guys have anything?
No. Okay. Well, precedent. I can't see setting that precedent. There's too many streets that are going to be detoured too many times. Same argument comes up every time if we do this. Are these streets going to be able to put back in somewhat a decent shape with filling, replacing what's damaged pretty bad and all that after this detour is finished, Jesse?
We'll do what we can with our maintenance staff with patching any potholes that come up, and then if there's deep cracks that need to be filled, we'll fill them in with our maintenance staff as well.
This is set for a road streets project, what, 4 or 5 years from now, possibly?
Maybe a little bit beyond that.
Okay. Yeah, the only problem I have, I guess, I don't want to set a precedent of every time somebody has a detour, we drop their assessment, because it's inconvenient, yes, but it's going to happen. But the problem with this one is the heavy trucks coming through there. They do have a point that's a road rated for, was it 4,000? And we have trucks that are quite a bit bigger than that going through there right now for the last few weeks. So it is a solid point, but I guess I would take this and just kind of remember it as we go into the future and when we do our assessment for this. I would definitely take very good care of patching that street after we shut down the detour, though. I think that's something that we definitely need to pay attention to. If nothing else, especially if that road isn't getting redone for another 4 or 5, 6, 7 years. So,
Well, Jesse, we're doing streets where you do the, it's not just a pothole fill, it's a, what do you call it, a patch where you got a whole segment of street, and that's not assessed when you do that, right?
The large patching project, no, we do not assess for that
So
one.
if this street needs that, we'll be able to accommodate their need, the public's need for if there's something develops based on this heavy traffic?
If that's what the council wants to prioritize, we definitely can.
Okay.
I think there's at least one spot that was recently done on that route, and then, or was there 2? I know of
There's
one
been a
for sure.
couple recent patches on that road.
So, there has been some patching there, but
I would agree with you, Mike. That's, it's unfortunate. I mean, a lot of heavy traffic is, bad for that type of street, so.
I did mean what I said at the last meeting, though, about getting ready for the 210 project and making sure that we learn from this and as we get ready for that and what we might be able to do, whether it's having these signs from the beginning or to try and deal with the traffic that's going to be pushed off of Washington.
especially truck traffic.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm not worried about the little Honda Civics.
Well, you get a lot of them going through your neighborhood. It's kind of annoying too. But they don't do as much damage. Any more discussion on that one? You guys ready to move on? Item number 2 is the approval of Brainerd Transit fare increase. And we went through this one last week. I guess we're just revisiting. So go ahead, Mr. Dean, if you want to walk us through it again.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. So we're just reintroducing the item that was discussed at the last meeting. Really, the item is the same, including the recommendation of increasing the Brainerd originating fares to $4 or $8 for same-day service. One item to note, the question came up about how the recommendation reconciled the share of the expenses in the analysis, and something that staff did when we were preparing this, because with the removal of Pine River as a partner in the program, there was a share of expenses that had to be distributed. So as part of this analysis, staff used fuel and fuel costs based on projected ridership and approximate miles and miles per gallon, and used that portion of fuel or projected fuel expenses to develop kind of a, let's call it a draft percentage of share of expenses, and applied that share of expenses throughout the remainder of, let's call them the constant costs of like salaries, the Blue Sky contract. And that's how we came up with the fare structure and the percentages included in that analysis. But other than that, I can definitely clarify if the committee has additional questions on the matter.
may I?
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
This is not specific to Brainerd routes and buses, but with the county cutting back their service, obviously the buses aren't going to be traveling as much, but is there going to be staff reductions as well throughout their process?
So as we kind of implied that some of these, I'll call them commuter routes from Crosby and Pequot will have a few hours in between their trips in the morning and the afternoons. We plan to utilize them in town as best as possible. But they do have driver shortages currently, so we're hoping that this will also help with some of the issues that they're having with driver shortages.
Okay.
Anybody have a motion?
I made the motion last time and we put it through. But I think I made some assumptions that, we know what assuming does. I would like to hear from the rest of the council on if we want to spend levy dollars to support transit. I'd like to have that conversation with the rest of the council. The reason I supported it is because I, didn't think that was an option, but if other people are open to it, I'd like to hear. And Connie didn't throw up when I asked her about it last time, so that's, I gave her the opportunity to vomit on the floor, but
I'll make a motion that we move this forward to the council for further discussion.
without any,
No, just
You don't wanna
move
make a
the
motion to
discussion.
deny it?
Move the discussion forward to the full council meeting. That's all I'm doing. That's my motion.
I'd second that motion.
Motion and second. Any more discussion? All right, hearing none, go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Oh, easy, Alan?
Next item is a request to authorize to solicit engineering services for Southwest Fourth Street outfall repair. Mr. Dean, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So staff was made aware of a significant washout adjacent to Southwest 4th Street across from May Street. In the packet, I included a handful of photos of the washout that we'd taken a look at. In reviewing the issue, there is a failure of the stormwater outfall leading to washing out of the bluff and the riverbank, with a considerable amount of sand getting washed into the river. With the conditions of the river levels being incredibly low and the potential for future washing out of the slope and the sands going into the river, staff is hoping to complete the repairs as soon as possible before this fall, if at all possible. Staff did meet with the DNR on site, and they are also concerned about the sand washing into the river and the potential issues with the slopes. As the project is complex with coordination with the DNR and the Army Corps, as well as more complicated repair, and with engineering staff occupied with work on other projects in construction, staff is requesting authorization to hire a consulting engineer to perform survey of the washout area and then design the repair as necessary. To be able to complete the necessary steps of surveying, design, and soliciting contractors and having the time to construct it as soon as possible, most ideally by fall while the river is low, staff is requesting to direct solicit a contract proposal from an engineering firm to complete the survey and design. Staff is able to solicit multiple proposals via RFP. However, the time necessary to go this route would likely delay the repair into 2024. At that time, staff is concerned about the river levels and the ability to perform that work, or the cost to do so under higher river levels. At this time, staff is requesting direction from the council on the two options listed in the request, the preferred option being authorizing staff to direct solicit and execute an engineering contract to complete the survey and design work on the repair and begin the process as soon as possible.
Two questions for me. If we go with number one, how fast can we get it done? And what is your engineer estimate for something like this? And I guess the third question is, where's the money going to come from?
So first question, how fast can we do it? If authorized by the council to direct solicit a contract, most of them have an hourly rate established for 2023. So it's just a matter of shopping it out to a couple of them, find out who has the availability to get started on it right away. So from that perspective, if staff is authorized to execute a contract like that, we can get the process started almost within a few days. If we can get it done in a few days, depending on how long the survey and design takes, hopefully a few weeks, we can potentially solicit a bid from a contractor or a quote from a contractor and get started early to mid-September, I would hope. Ideally, we like to hope that the river will stay low, but I guess that depends on the weather as well. If you could repeat your second question.
Yeah, just what is your estimate on cost on something like this?
It could be somewhere in the realm of about 150 to 200,000. There's quite a considerable amount of sand out in the river, so it won't be very easy for a contractor to access it. It's a very steep slope, so it's going to cost a little bit for getting the equipment down there to be able to move that. The repair itself is actually not too terribly complicated. There's a lot of fill that has to go in there in the repair, but it's the slow work of having to get down there, work in the river. There's going to be some permitting with the DNR, as well as the Army Corps. So there's a lot of little things that go in there, but I think overall we're talking somewhere in the realm of 150 to 200,000. My recommendation is that we would utilize our stormwater fund for this, since it is a stormwater outfall. One potential avenue we have is state aid dollars, but because we are still in an advanced status, I wouldn't recommend it.
Okay. Yeah, I actually went and took a look at this just to see the size of it, and it's pretty massive. And it is getting closer and closer to the street. It's on private property. It's kind of destroying some property. So they do have a nice little beach at the bottom, though. And it's growing every time it rains.
So would you say that is there a chance we may not find a contractor being it's mid-construction season? Most people have their schedule all laid out.
I believe we would. I know some of the contractors that are doing work right now are actually looking for fall work. So we're timed out pretty well that we might be able to find, and the same thing with our added item, that we're going to get some competitive bids with contractors looking for fall work.
All right. Any other questions or a motion?
I would move we go with the staff's number one recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Just want to make sure you say it. Authorizing staff to solicit a survey design proposal from a consulting engineering firm for the repairs on Southwest Fourth Street outfall. Any other discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
I think it was indicated that this could turn into a real big problem if we don't do it sooner than later, right?
The sooner the better, yeah.
Okay. All right, thanks.
All right, hearing no more discussion, go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passes.
You're on. Yeah.
Item number 4, we have a discussion on the street scan software and proposals. Mr. Dean, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So staff is presenting a couple proposals from companies that provide the software and street scanning services. I did provide a copy of the proposal from GoodPoint for reference. That's a similar service that it did not have until today. So the 3 members of the committee do have that. Street Scan was presented to the SPW committee early in 2022, and staff's recommendation of implementing this type of service is to get a better idea of our street condition, and asset inventory, as well as assisting with development of our capital improvement plans. While the concept was generally supported at the time, the committee was looking for additional proposals for cost comparison. So staff is bringing this back up as we do want to provide that information to the committee. Also would like to include in the 2024 budget and years moving forward costs to implement these services so we can better know our system and put together a more robust capital improvement program. The general concept of all the proposals is similar, but there are some differences. Some costs include benefits such as sidewalk condition analysis and sidewalk width analysis, while others don't. With all the proposals received, staff is just recommending costs in the 2024 budget and further years to perform the street scanning and implement the asset and pavement management software. As it appears that the GoodPoint proposal is the most cost-effective, staff would work with GoodPoint to refine the cost to include assets such as the sidewalks and signs and include these costs in the budget. However, staff would return to council with a formal proposal and a contract when the time comes to get ready to perform the work. So at this time, we're not really looking for an award, just a recommendation that SPW would be okay if we were to include this in a proposed budget.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Jeff, go ahead.
I haven't had a chance to look through the one that you sent out this evening, but I didn't see any references in the first 2. Is that uncommon, or? I mean, it's their proposal. Wouldn't they give some sort of indication? They gave numbers of miles of streets and this and that on the one, but are you familiar with this type of gadget?
Yes, so I've seen different softwares. There's a lot of different softwares out there. The street scan that was proposed to the SPW committee last year, we would have been the first community in Minnesota to have this. They're a little bit more focused, a little further east, like Ohio and those states.
Is it,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. Is it like a remote operation then? You don't have to have a person with it? Is it like a sort of an AI deal, or?
So the initial scanning is done by like a van with a handful of different technology that literally scans the roadway, takes a video and analyzes the condition of the roadway based on cracks, potholes, the ride, and assigns a number to it based on the amount of defects and deterioration that it's finding based on the measurements that technology is measuring. So they go and drive all of our streets. And then the software is just a way to compile that and help build our capital program by using that asset management software.
And then one other thing, talk about a ramp on sidewalks. Is that the curb cut? Or is that actual?
Correct.
Okay.
And that's something that we would like to see as part of our asset inventory, is getting an idea of which of our curb ramp and curb cuts are ADA accessible and which do not meet current standards.
Okay.
Question on that. If we find some of these older sidewalks aren't ADA accessible, does that mean we automatically have to start fixing those faster and faster? Is that going to add to our streets budget as far as the sidewalk part of it?
No, sir. Part of our ADA transition plan that we had adopted a couple years back is that when we do a project on the adjacent street, that we address at least the curb ramps for sure and make them ADA accessible. So you'll see that with our reconstruction projects we're going through there and correcting ADA accessible issues. Since we are doing a project there, that is the commitment that we put it, but we did not make a commitment that as we know that they're non-compliant to execute a contract.
Okay. So with this one, the more I think about it, I do like the idea of doing a street scan. The part that maybe I'm not as big of a fan of is this, what do you call it, asset management? That's the software thing where people can come in and report potholes or cracks, or is that what that is?
Well, that's a citizen engagement module
Citizen
that goes with
engagement.
the street scan. That's just an additional module. The asset management is just a collection in a GIS form of all of our streets, which ones have sidewalks, where are the signs located.
More of
That's
an
from an
analysis.
asset management is really an inventory of all the little facilities that we have in our streets.
Okay. Well, looking at the cost, I think the citizen engagement part of it was about $5,000 a year, which is kind of doubling the cost of our annual, software fees or whatever it would be. And I honestly just don't think people would use it. So I think specifically going forward, I would take that part out of it just to save on cost for, on an annual basis. I've kind of thought back and forth on what you do with the sidewalks, because I think that's a separate scan. Do you pay extra for a sidewalk scan?
So that's where these vary just a little bit. So, like the street scan, they run like a scooter that's equipped with similar technology that runs it figures out your width, it runs a condition analysis and what those sidewalks look like. Like the Good Point software that I presented here, that doesn't do that. What their van does is when the van drives the street, they can see the sidewalk from the camera that they have, so they're notating that there is sidewalk there. They can make some inferences from the video of how wide the sidewalk is, but it's a little bit more limited compared to the street scan software. So there's, like I said, pluses and minuses. Obviously, you're paying a little bit more for one service, but you're getting more information from that service. So it really is more of a weighing the benefits and what you're looking for in the service versus the cost.
Okay. So you're looking for authorization tonight specifically to include street scanning and asset management software services in the 10-year capital plan, beginning with initial scanning next year. This is something that we'll see again as far as actually approving or awarding these different bids, whichever one we pick, and we can also choose which parts of that at that time too.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. So if this is included in the budget, when we get closer to 2024, when it's time to develop a contract with somebody, we would have these different companies come up with a more formal proposal, try and get them on the same page of what we're looking for, so we can compare a little bit more apples to apples better, and present those options to the council for an award.
I'm more comfortable with that than moving forward with any of these that we have right in front of us today.
I would then move to go along with staff's I'm sorry.
You can.
Staff's recommendation to just give them, I guess, to get it in the budget, I guess, is what we're looking, come back with a proposal for one of these three options, I guess.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item is a discussion on micro-mobility regulations. I believe this is Mr. Dean again, right?
Yes, sir,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair. So we did receive a recent request for some direction regarding what our regulations are for kind of electric assist bikes, scooters, other alternative modes of transportation. right now, the city code only covers bicycles, and city code 1335 does not cover electronic assist for these types of mobility. So really, staff is just looking for direction on the council if there's interest in regulating these alternative modes of transportation, and if so, what kind of considerations does the council want to see in a proposed ordinance if that's the case? Things like speed limits, walking speed versus an actual speed limit, the types of different mobilities, where they should be allowed, where they shouldn't be allowed, and then just other different considerations, like width restrictions, if there's going to be width restrictions. I did include in the packet some of the definitions from the DNR on what different classes of an electric bicycle is. They have 3 different classes, as well as their use table of where different types of modes are allowed in different types of facilities for the DNR. Then I also included a use table from the city of Bloomington, which I thought was a little bit more applicable for a municipality such as ours, where they have several different types of mobility and the different types of areas like roadways, sidewalks, trails, and parks, private property, and where they are and are not allowed. So I just included them as reference, but really looking for direction from the council on how the council would like to see us address these in the future.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
we do have an individual I think would like to speak to us about this that's here tonight.
Okay. Is that you, Doug? Yeah, if you want to come up and say a few words, we'll try to keep it moving along, but if you want to say.
You don't have to.
You don't have to, but you can. I'll give you a couple minutes.
No problem. I was told to keep it brief. Totally understand.
There's a little button on the front of that if
There, is it on?
that's on now.
All right.
Now just name and address.
Thank you.
before start.
Doug Hetland, 724 G Street, Northeast Brainerd.
Thank you.
So I just come here as an enthusiast. I have a small commercial stake in this. I work at Iron Hills Gun and Pawn. We deal in some of these personal devices on a used basis. On occasion, we see them come in. Mostly, I just wanted to urge the council or committees, and also to, before I forget, to volunteer my time. I know quite a bit about these different devices. I'm a multi-sport person myself. I do bicycles, e-bikes. I ride skateboards, electric boards, all kinds of different types of micro-mobility, as they say. And I had just heard there was possibly some upcoming discussion on this. I kind of wanted to get in on the ground floor. But I wanted to urge the committees to understand that I believe that these are they're zero emission transportation. I know people that use these on a daily basis that either can't afford cars or choose not to drive. And I think it's really important that they be not over-regulated. And again, I would be happy to get in on any discussion with anyone individually or other committees or subcommittees or anything. I have seen some other communities believe what is, in my opinion, to be mistakes in overregulation and that, and I would not like to see the same thing happen here, and that's why I come here before you. Thank you for your time. Is there any questions that I might be able to field, or?
He came by the other day and was doing a handstand on his electric skateboard.
That's pretty cool.
I do not recall that actually, but
We won't make it illegal.
thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you for your time.
No, I definitely don't want to be over-regulating on micromobility. I do think there's an issue. We've had people come in and complain about it before where, some of these things are starting to move pretty fast now. So I think it's all based on miles per hour. And I think you had something on the Bloomington one right there, that, 15 miles per hour. I think 15 miles per hour on a sidewalk is moving pretty fast. But I don't see it going any lower than that. If we're going to set up a speed limit on our sidewalks, maybe we could have
The DNR does list like walking speed as another frame of reference if 15 miles an hour is too fast.
Sure.
Where generally what the approximate walking speed
Sure.
could be.
well, we have our streets, our sidewalks, and we have our trails in town, and we have lots of green space too. And I think that you got to delineate what you're going to let on each one of those. Our streets are for everybody, for whatever you're going to drive, anywhere from a bike to a semi. Well, some of our streets. And then you have our trails, which are open for snowmobiles sometimes, and you should be able to go as fast as you want on a bike on those trails or whatever kind of, motorized device that you're on, as long as it's not gas power. I think the snowmobiles are the only gas power we allow on those, correct?
Currently, but
Currently.
again, we don't have regulations for motorized bicycles and,
Okay.
that other nature.
So I think the discussion really comes down to what we want to allow on our sidewalks is the big question. And I have no problem allowing, micro mobility. What is the big word for it?
Micromobility?
Personal electric vehicles is one word. There are quite a few acronyms out there.
Okay. Zero emissions electric vehicles, we'll call them today. But I think if we just if we were to simplify it, it'll help people understand that they just need to not go 30 miles an hour on a skateboard that's got a motor on it. But anything that has gas power, I wouldn't want that on the sidewalks either.
Do you use your skateboard on the street or sidewalk?
If there is absolutely no one on the sidewalk, if it's kind of a quiet off and not during the business day, I may use it on the sidewalk, but rarely.
Okay.
Usually it's on like the walking trails. By the way, the DNR usually specifies 20 miles an hour or less on most of their trails. That's kind of a state thing. I also have a few other things here, information, if anybody has any individual questions.
Send that stuff to staff, because what we're gonna probably move forward with here is having staff come up with the ordinance for this. And then we can change it around however we want before we actually approve it. So you can send it to us
Would you
too.
like me to see? I'd be happy to be involved in it.
Mr. Dean, right there.
Okay?
Yep. You guys have any more comments on that?
I would like to have more, I mean, thank you for coming. I would like to hear more from the community before I don't know what most people in our community would want in this. So I guess I'm saying email me, anybody who's watching on the YouTubes, what do you want to see with this?
Sure. Yeah.
About 9 people, I think, watch.
I know.
Okay. Do you want a motion?
I will move that we direct staff to cobble something together. It's an ordinance.
In those words.
Second. That's electric operated.
Yeah.
Second on that.
Okay. Directing staff to prepare a proposed ordinance regulating micromobility. We'll go with that. All right. Motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Number 6, we have consideration directing staff to amend Section 320 of the City Code pertaining to contesting citations. And this is Mr. Kromvik. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So currently for appeals of citations, the ordinance requires the city council to periodically approve a list of lawyers from which the city administrator will select a hearing officer to hear and determine a matter for which the hearing is requested. Upon review, staff does not believe this is an efficient or cost-effective way to administer appeals of citations. Currently, right now, city council reviews zoning appeals, which would be an interpretation of the zoning code, as well as city council reviews appeals of nuisance abatement assessments at the end of the assessment year. So staff recommends that the city council become the authority to review citation appeals in order for efficiency, consistency with our other processes, and to lower costs for non-prevailing parties. Staff did review cities similar to Brainerd and found no other municipalities that keep a list of attorneys available for appeals. So with that, staff's recommendation is to direct staff to amend section 320.17 and 320.19 of the city code pertaining to contesting citations and designate city council as the authority to hear and review appeals. And I can certainly answer any questions.
I guess just in general, you probably just covered it, but what is the major difference here? What is the change that we're trying to make?
So the major change would be instead of city council approving a list of lawyers from which the city administrator selects a hearing officer, they become essentially the judge in appeals case. The major difference would be the city council becomes the authority to either waive or deny a potential citation. So right now, city council, like I had said, they would review zoning appeals, which is an interpretation of the zoning code, say for a lot split or anything else that could potentially be denied. City council is the authority for that, as well as they're the authority for nuisance abatement assessments at the end of the year. So essentially, this would then also be purview of the city council to review citations.
Thank you. You guys have any questions on that?
I would move to follow staff's recommendation on this.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, go to a vote. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. All right. Moving on to number 7, we have direction on active code enforcement cases. Mr. Krombeck, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So staff is bringing 2 properties before the committee for review and is looking for direction from council on how to proceed with the cases. The first property is 1306 Oak Street. So the issue with this property is there's a fence that is falling apart. We did have a past precedence on this, and staff's recommendation for this property is to obtain an administrative warrant and remove the fence. They have received the $100, $200, $300 citation, have not responded regarding the fence, so it is staff's recommendation to abate the fence that is falling over.
Thank you.
Second one is 412 J Street Northeast. So this property, staff is recommending obtaining a search warrant and abating the junk and debris. This one has 2 active violations going right now, 1 for junk and debris. So this would include anything that's broken, appliances that are not together and not working anymore. There's a stack of tires there. So that's the junk and debris portion. Anything that's considered of value would not be taken as part of this warrant. Right now, that's considered outdoor storage, and there may be something in the future that Safety and Public Works reviews in relation to that.
Thank you. Is that all?
Yep, that is everything, and certainly can answer any questions.
Mr. Chazak?
I would make a motion to approve both of the staff recommendations on these 2 properties.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Now we have just number 8 here, the additional item, and this is just approval of plans, specs, and authorized bidding for the Lum Park Road SPRA project. Mr. Dean, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Widseth is finished preparing the plans and getting stated approval for the Lum Park State Park Road account project that we have coming up. With that, we'd like to get out to advertisement to bid as soon as possible. With the authorization by the council tonight, our intention would be to have a bid opening on Thursday, August 10th, with an award recommendation presented at the council meeting on August 21st. And with that, I would look for provide a recommendation to authorize the advertisement of the plans.
Excellent. Anybody got questions, or do you want to make a motion?
I would move follow staff's recommendation on this.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, go to a vote. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. We can adjourn to the council meeting.